All right, welcome. Today we are diving into a pretty wild claim from a really controversial book. The idea is this: what if the human mind isn't some deep mystery, but a computer system, a system that can be hacked? And what if the tech to do it is already out there? So, this really brings us to the big question, the one that kicks this whole thing off. Can a human mind actually be hacked? And look, I'm not talking about just persuasion or good marketing. I mean truly broken into, controlled, just like you'd hack a computer. Everything we're talking about today comes from a single source, a 2010 book called Project Soulcatcher. It's by a guy named Robert Duncan, and he claims to be a government insider who worked on projects for the DoD and the CIA. Now, just to be clear, our job here isn't to prove or disprove what he says. We're just here to unpack the really complex and frankly kind of terrifying world that he lays out in this book. So the whole foundation of this book, the main idea that everything else is built on, is one single powerful analogy. The idea that you can take the rules of computer hacking and apply them, one for one, directly to the human brain. And it all starts with a field called cybernetics. The way the author frames it, it's basically the science of control, of steering a system toward a specific goal. And that is the key, because if the mind is just a system, then suddenly it's not this big, unknowable mystery anymore. It's a machine, and machines can be controlled. Okay, so here's where that core analogy gets really concrete. The book draws these direct parallels. Your brain, that's the CPU. Your consciousness, well, that's the operating system. And malware, in this world, that's a psychological script, something designed to mess with you. The author presents this as a perfect one-to-one match between the digital world and our inner world. Right, so if you accept the premise that the mind can be hacked, the next obvious question is, how? How would somebody actually do that? Well, let's get into the supposed arsenal of technologies that the book claims are already in use. So the book lays out this whole toolkit of alleged technologies, and honestly, the names sound like they're straight out of a sci-fi movie. You've got Medusa, which stands for Mob Excess Deterrent Using Silent Audio. There's TAMI, the Thought and Memory Interface. And SQUAD, short for Silent Sound Spread Spectrum. A key point here is that the author isn't talking about these as future theories. He's claiming this is an operational arsenal that exists right now. Let's take over-the-horizon radar, for example. According to the book, these huge radar facilities are often disguised as something totally harmless, like a meteor observatory. But the claim is that they're so incredibly sensitive, they can actually track tiny changes in your body from huge distances away. And this isn't supposed to be new tech either. The book claims this has been possible since the 1960s. And then there's this thing called Medusa. Now check this out. The way it's described, this isn't about sound waves traveling through the air to your ears. No. The claim is that it shoots microwave pulses at you that create a tiny shock wave inside your skull, which your ears then pick up as sound. And the book's chilling takeaway is right there in the quote. You can't block it out. Okay, so we've talked about the alleged tools, but what about the methods? How are these tools supposedly used? This is where that computer hacking analogy we talked about gets super specific. All right, think about a simple computer hack, like a spoofed email, right? It looks like it's from your boss, but it's not. Well, the book claims there's a mind-hacking equivalent called synthetic telepathy. The idea is that voices can be projected directly into someone's mind, making them think it's their own thought, or maybe even a message from God. Information theft gets a major upgrade in this scenario, too. You know how a keystroke logger on a computer just records what you type? It's pretty basic. Well, the mind-hacking version allegedly bypasses the keyboard, bypasses everything, and uses techniques with names like screen scraping to pull information right from a person's visual cortex, or even probes their memories directly. And that brings us to maybe the most extreme claim of all, a total system takeover. In the computer world, a rootkit gives a hacker complete, hidden administrative control. The book's horrifying parallel to that is the complete subversion of a person's core identity, essentially creating a split personality, or what the author calls a programmed assassin. So, all of this naturally leads to one massive question. Why? I mean, why would anyone even want to develop technologies like this? Well, the next part of the book tries to answer that, laying out the supposed goals behind these alleged secret programs. According to the author, the end game here is, well, it's pretty clear. Total control. The ability to create what he calls remote control soldiers, to conduct experiments on people without their consent, and to wage a form of psychological warfare that's completely silent and invisible. And the names the author gives for these alleged programs are just as chilling as the goals themselves. He talks about programs with names like Zombie Ivy and Personnel Effects, but maybe the most disturbing one is a program he claims was called SATAN, which he says is an acronym for Silent Fascination Through Amplified Neurons. To try and make all of this feel less abstract, the book includes what it says are interviews with targets. This quote here really gets to the heart of that programmed assassin idea, the complete twisting of a person's fundamental nature, completely against their will. Then there's this concept the author calls the death matrix. And what's really striking about this is just how cold and calculated it sounds. It's described as a kind of probabilistic model. You combine different tactics, like trying to induce alcoholism or forcing someone into isolation, and you use this matrix to calculate the statistical odds of that person's eventual demise. Okay, so if any of this is supposedly happening, is there any way to defend against it? The last part of what we're looking at today covers the countermeasures and the ideas about information control that are laid out in the book. Interestingly, the first line of defense the book describes isn't a physical shield or anything like that. It's all about information. It's a concept called cognitive containment. The basic idea is that the real fight is on the battlefield of what people believe. So you discredit any real information as science fiction, and you flood all the channels with so much noise that it's impossible to find the real signal. But what about an actual physical defense? The author brings up this quote, and it's interesting because it kind of moves past the whole tinfoil hat joke into a more serious suggestion, putting a layer of conducting mesh, almost like a personal Faraday cage, right into your body armor or your clothes. And all of this leaves us with the final, pretty unsettling question that's really at the core of this entire book. If your mind really is like an operating system, and if your thoughts can be written and rewritten like lines of code, then who's controlling the source code of your reality?